My mother said my brother was dead. But in her room I found a vial of medicine that could kill. My home used to be a place filled with love. Every evening, the whole family would gather around the dinner table. The rich scent of roasted chicken mixed with the clinking of silverware and lively chatter. My mother would ask about our day, my father would tell stories, and Ben, my older brother, would always crack a joke that made the entire family roar with laughter. I thought that laughter would last forever. Until one rainy night, when a single phone call shattered everything. The police reported that Ben had been in an accident, his motorcycle, and he had gone into the river. My father bolted to the garage, the rain lashing against the windshield like stones. My mother sat in the passenger seat, her hands gripping the dashboard, murmuring, "He is going to be all right, is he not?" My father did not answer, just clenched the steering wheel. I sat in the back, suffocating in a fear no one dared to name. The rhythmic squeak of the windshield wipers did nothing to erase the truth waiting for us at the end of the road. The riverbank was pitch black. Searchlights cut across the churning, furious water. Figures in reflective gear waded in, safety lines wrapped around them. They searched for 3 days, combing every section of the river, but they only recovered the mangled motorcycle. Ben was gone. On the 3rd day, an officer approached, his voice grim. The current was too strong. His chances of survival were practically zero. My mother crumpled, clinging to the last shred of hope. "No. My son is a strong swimmer. Please." His next words extinguished everything. "Ma'am, he was severely injured before he fell. There was nothing anyone could have done." My mother collapsed right there on the riverbank. My father held her tightly, but her sobs still broke apart in the night. The funeral was held a week later. An empty casket sat in the center of the service. My mother sat there, as still as a statue. My father stood beside her, silent. A few days later, I accidentally said Ben's name. My father turned, his eyes as sharp as a knife. "Your brother is gone. Do not mention him again." His words turned our home into a cold, laughterless place. My mother became a shadow, silent in a dark room. My father wrapped himself in silence, building a wall between us. They chose to face their grief alone. My mother drowned in sorrow. My father locked himself in silence. And I was lost between their battle lines, trying to hold on to the fragments of my memory of Ben. But every time I thought of him, I felt a wave of guilt. 3 years passed. The house was like a silent cemetery. Then one morning, I saw my mother standing in front of the mirror, holding a tube of red lipstick, a color I had not seen in our home for a long time. She was wearing a floral dress, something I thought had been buried along with the memory of Ben. A flicker of hope ignited in me. Perhaps my mother was finding herself again. Perhaps the pain was finally fading. But then I noticed something strange. Every Wednesday and Friday, my mother would dress up, put on makeup, and drive away. She would return after dark, a hidden exhaustion in her eyes. One day, I gathered my courage and asked, "Where are you going, Mom?" She was taking off her shoes, her back to me. "Just meeting an old friend." She did not look at me. "Which friend? Do I know them?" "You would not know them," she replied, then walked straight into her room and closed the door. An old friend. My mother did not have many friends, and the ones I knew she had cut ties with after the accident. Suspicion, sharp as a thorn, pricked at me. One Friday afternoon, I decided to act. I followed my mother's car, my heart pounding, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I felt like a traitor, spying on my own mother, but I had to know. She stopped at a small cafe in the old town. I parked across the street, hiding behind a tree. A man appeared, young, only a few years older than me, wearing a light-colored shirt and trousers. They sat by the window, their conversation intense. At one point, my mother wiped away a tear. The man handed her a tissue. I raised my phone and took a picture. The image was clear. My mother and a strange man. On the way home, my mind was blank. My father was in the living room, his eyes glued to the television, looking like an empty shell. My mother, the woman I thought had been consumed by grief, was now secretly meeting someone else. I wanted to scream, to show him the picture, to tell him everything. But I could not. I went to my room, locked the door, and remained silent. I began to think my mother was having an affair, and my father, who had lost everything, was about to be betrayed one more time. As my mother slowly came back to life, I noticed my father's health beginning to fail. She put on red lipstick. He coughed through the night. She wore floral dresses. He grew thinner, like a tree slowly withering. The contrast was too stark for me to ignore. One Friday afternoon, just after my mother left, I snuck into her room. The floorboards creaked, her perfume lingering in the air. I opened her wardrobe, my hand brushing against stacks of fabric, and felt something cold and hard at the bottom. A small glass vial, a white label with tiny print. I ran to my room, locked the door, my hands shaking as I took a photo of the vial and searched for it on my computer. The results appeared on the screen. Potent sedative, strictly prescription only. An overdose causes slow cardiac failure, difficult to detect in an autopsy. I looked out the window. My father was in the garden, leaning against a tree for support, looking frail. Everything became horribly clear. My mother, the vial, the strange man. My father was slowly dying. My mother's revival was not a miracle. It was a plan. The floral dresses were a costume for a new life. The Friday afternoons were for planning. The vial was the tool. A perfect, untraceable death. Afterward, my mother would go to the other man, a widow who had found new comfort. The thought turned me to stone. The love I had for my mother morphed into a cold, chilling rage. But a part of me still wondered, could I be wrong? She loved Dad. She loved Ben. How could she do this? I could not confront her. She would deny it, play the victim. I had to start with the other man. The photo from the cafe was my only clue. I knew where they met. For a week, I circled the cafe waiting. Then, on a Friday afternoon, he appeared, alone. When his car left the parking lot, I did not follow. I just wrote down his license plate number. I asked a friend who worked at a law firm for help. 2 days later, she sent me a text message, a name, Alex, and an address. The address was not a home, but the Green Valley Rehabilitation Center on the outskirts of the city. I planned to go there the next day. But that evening, my phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? A man's voice, calm but weary. You are the one outside the cafe on Friday, are you not? The girl in the blue car? It was Alex. How did you get my number? Your mother gave it to me, he replied. She said you might come looking for me. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 3 p.m, Central Park, I will explain. At the park, Alex was sitting on a bench, a file beside him. He did not beat around the bush. I am not your mother's lover. I am the man who found your brother 3 years ago. He pushed the file toward me. My hands shook as I opened it. The first page was a photo of Ben, lying in a hospital bed, his eyes vacant. The air was sucked from my lungs. Alex looked directly at me. He is not dead, he said, but he does not remember who you are. I clutched the file, my head spinning. Ben was alive? But why did my mother hide it? Why did my father not know? I wanted to scream, to cry, to run to Ben immediately. But I just sat there, motionless, feeling as though the world had just collapsed all over again. I do not remember how I drove home. The road blurred before my eyes. Everything around me seemed to dissolve. Only the file on the passenger seat was in sharp focus, heavy as a secret waiting to explode. I walked into the house. My mother was in the kitchen, wiping a glass. She turned and smiled. That smile, which I had once thought was fake, now seemed to hide something much deeper. I walked straight to the dining table, my hands trembling. I put the file down, gently but firmly. The photo of Ben slid out, landing right in front of her. My mother's smile vanished. The glass in her hand slipped and shattered on the floor. The sharp sound cut through the silence between us. Alex told me, I whispered, my voice hoarse. Ben is alive. My mother took a step back, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with a panic that was not of guilt, but of a plan in ruins. How did you find out? She asked, her voice trembling. That question confirmed everything. How long have you known? I pressed, trying to keep my own voice from shaking. My mother sank, her hands on the table to keep from falling. Just a few weeks, she said, almost a whisper. She looked up, her red-rimmed eyes filled with absolute fear. That is why you changed, I said, as if answering my own question. The dresses, the lipstick. You were not reviving, you were preparing to face Dad. To do what? To protect Ben, she replied. Her voice choked, as if on the verge of collapsing. I cannot bring him home. If your father finds out, he will hurt him again. I was stunned, as if the air had been knocked out of me. That statement was sharper than the truth of Ben being alive. That accident, it was not an accident. It was your father, my mother said, each word a sharp blade, and I found the proof. I was reeling, my mind a vortex of confusion. Dad? The silent man I thought had lost everything because of Ben? It was impossible. Ben discovered your father had embezzled a large sum of money, my mother continued, her voice flat, as if reciting a painful story. They argued in the study. I heard everything. She told me about that fateful night, Ben shouting that he would go to the police. My father screaming back, refusing to let Ben destroy everything. That night, Ben drove away and never came back. I suspected it from the beginning, she said. So I went to the police impound lot to look at his mangled motorcycle. She led me down to the basement and opened an old iron box. Inside was a file, the inspection report for the motorcycle, which she had secretly requested from an old friend. She pointed to a line circled in red. The brake line had been cut, intentionally. Everything inside me crumbled. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, but the evidence before me was undeniable. Then why did you not go to the police? I asked, my voice shaking. My mother looked at me, her eyes filled with pain. If I had, how would you have lived? The daughter of a murderer? How would people look at you? What would happen to your future? She pointed toward the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. The vial I had found. That is why I did it, she said, her voice catching. I could not bring Ben back while he was still here. He would find a way to hurt him again. End quote. I used the sedative, just small doses, just to make him weak, unable to cause harm, so that when Ben came home, he could not do anything. She looked at me, her eyes desperate. I just wanted him to face his sin, in silence, for the rest of his life. I did it all for Ben. And for you. Her words were like a knife. Could she not see? She wanted to protect us, but she had chosen a path of darkness, dragging the entire family with her. She wanted to save us from our father, but her method would only destroy her. I could not let that happen. I had lost Ben once. I had just found him again. I would not let my mother lose herself. I acted, quickly. Rushing past her, I stormed into the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet. The vial of sedative was there, behind a bottle of shampoo. My mother ran after me, her voice frantic. What are you doing? I turned and looked her straight in the eye, and I threw the vial. It shattered against the tiled wall, the brown liquid spattering along with shards of glass. My mother's plan disintegrated in that single moment. No! I screamed, releasing 3 years of suppressed rage. Dad's way made him a monster. Your way will destroy you. My mother was stunned. Then she slid down the wall, her body racked with sobs. She was no longer a schemer, just an exhausted woman. I knelt down, looking at her. The anger was gone. I just saw a mother who had tried her best, however misguided. I wrapped my arms around her. For the first time, I felt how small she was in my arms, fragile, as if drained by impossible choices. Let me, I whispered into her tangled hair. I will face Dad, but we will do it the right way. No secrets, no poison. I held her tighter. I will end this. I did not know what I would say to my father, but I knew one thing. I would not let this secret destroy our family any longer. That night, I waited for my mother to fall asleep. My father was sitting in the living room, under the dim yellow light. He looked 10 years older. I walked over and stood in front of him. Ben is alive, I said. My father looked up. His expression was blank, then shifted to disbelief, then anger. What nonsense are you talking about? Do you have any idea what you are saying? I said nothing more. I just placed Alex's file on the table. I turned to the first page. The photo of Ben in a hospital bed, his eyes vacant. His hand trembled as he reached for the picture. He stared at the unfamiliar face of my brother. Where is this? How could he? He could not finish the sentence. Hope and fear warred on his face. I placed another photo beside it, a close-up of a cut brake line. This picture, I said, pointing to Ben, is the consequence of this one. The wall of ice he had built for 3 years shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. He dropped his head into his hands. For the first time, I heard him cry, a suppressed, broken sound. I just wanted to scare him, he whispered, his voice hoarse, to make him drop that stupid idea of going to the police. He confessed. About hiring someone to loosen the brakes. About it being just a warning. It was just a warning, he repeated, as if trying to convince himself. I never expected that it would rain so heavily that night. The road was slick. He had been living in his own hell, thinking he had killed his son. Tomorrow, I said, my voice as cold as ice, I am bringing Ben home. He looked up, his old face wet with tears. And you, Dad? I looked straight at him without a shred of pity. Will turn yourself in to the police. He did not fight. He did not beg. He just nodded, a slow, weary nod. In his eyes, I saw not just remorse. I saw relief. The release of a man who thought he had killed his son for 3 years, only to discover he was not a murderer, just a coward. The next morning, there were no tears. My father put on a clean shirt. My mother made him a cup of coffee. They looked like an old couple preparing for a long trip, a trip with no return date. I drove. My mother sat in the passenger seat. My father sat in the back. The silence in the car was heavier than the past 3 years combined. At the police station, my father went in alone. My mother and I were taken to another room. I placed everything on the table. Alex's file. The photo of the cut brake line. Even the recording of my father's confession, which I had secretly made the night before. Every piece of evidence was another shovelful of dirt, digging my family's grave deeper. That evening they came. The police cars. They were silent, but their red and blue lights danced on the walls of my house, a macabre ballet. Neighbors gathered, their eyes like drills, trying to pierce the walls of my home. 2 officers walked in. They read the warrant. My father did not resist. He just held out his hands. As the cold steel handcuffs clicked shut, my mother stood behind me. Her hand was ice cold, gripping mine tightly. This time, I was the one protecting her. The next day, my family's name was everywhere. Prominent businessman harms son over financial dispute. They knew nothing. They did not know about the pain, the desperation, the wrong choices. They only knew a sensational story. The shame burned my cheeks. But the fear was gone. I had lived with a ghost for 3 years. Now, he had a name, a face, and a prison cell to hold him. The trial ended. A week later, I was driving. My mother sat beside me. Alex led the way. The hallway of the rehabilitation center was long and white, sterile. Every one of my footsteps was a thud in my chest. He stopped in front of a door. He knocked gently. The door opened. It was him. Ben. He was thinner. There was a faint scar on his forehead. But those eyes, they were still the eyes of my brother. He looked at us. A stranger's look, defensive. He did not recognize us. My heart broke. But my mother stepped forward. She did not cry. She just raised her hand, her trembling fingers reaching out to touch his scar. "It is me, Ben," she whispered. "I have come to take you home." That touch, that voice, it was the key. The wall in his eyes crumbled. Memory, like a flood bursting through a dam, came rushing back. He looked at our mother, then at me. He began to cry, the cry of a lost child who had finally found his way home. He rushed forward, throwing his arms around our mother. Then he pulled me in too. For the first time in 3 years, we were a family again. Even if there were only 3 of us. I brought him home. The house was without our father, but it was also without lies. He did not remember everything. There were still gaps. Sometimes he would accidentally call me by the name of a nurse from the center. Each time my heart ached. But then, one evening, as my mother and I were busy in the kitchen, he walked in. He told a joke. A terrible old joke. And I laughed. His laugh. It was not the boisterous laugh from before. It was hesitant, but it was real. And I knew. The hearth in our home had been relit. It would never burn as brightly as it once had. But it was warm enough. Warm enough to heat the cracks that time would never completely fill.